The Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 2, The Ideas of Womanhood, published in Brooklyn Standard Union, January 21st, 1895. Swami Vivekananda, after being presented to the audience by Dr. James, President of Ethical Association, said in part, "The product of the slums of any nation cannot be the criterions of our judgment of that nation. One may collect the rotten, worm-eaten apples under every apple tree in the world, and write a book about each of them, and still know nothing of the beauty and possibility of the apple tree. Only in the highest and the best can we be judge of nation. The fallen are the races by themselves. Thus, it is not only proper, but just and right to judge a custom by its best, by its idea. The idea of womanhood centers in the Aryan race of India, the most ancient in the world's history. In that race, men and women were priests. Sabha, Sabatmini, or Sahadharmini. Sabattimini or Sahadharmini, or co-religionist, as the Vedas call them. There, every family had its hearth or altar, on which, at the time of the wedding, the marriage fire was kindled, which was kept alive until either spouse died, when the funeral pile was lighted from its spark. Their man and wife together offered their sacrifice, and this idea was carried so far that men could not even pray alone, because it was held that he was only half of being. For that reason, no unmarried man could become a priest. The same held truth in the ancient Rome and Greece. But with the advent of the distinct and separate priest class, the co-priesthood of the woman in all these nations stepped back. First, it was the Assyrian race, coming of Semitic blood, which proclaimed the doctrine that girls have no voice and no right, even when married. The Persian drank deep of this Babylonian idea, and by them it was carried to Rome and to Greece and everywhere women degenerated. Another cause was instrumental in bringing this about: the change in the system of marriage. The earlier system was matriarchal one, that is, one in which the mother was the center and in which the girls acceded to her station. This led to the curious system of the polyandries or polyandries, where five or six brothers often married one wife. Even the Vedas contain a trace of it in the provision that when a man died without leaving any child, his widow was permitted to live with another man until she becomes a mother, but the child she bore did not belong to their father, but it but to her dead husband. In later years, the widow was allowed to marry again, which the modern idea forbids her to do. But side by side with this excrescence or very intense idea of personal purity sprang up in the nation. On every page, the Vedas preach personal purity. The laws in this respect were extremely strict. Every boy and girl was sent to the university where they studied until they are 20 or 30 years. There, the least impurity was punished almost cruelly. This idea of personal purity has imprinted itself deeply into the very heart of the race, amounting almost to a mania. The most conspicuous example of it is to be found in the capture of Chittor by the Mohammedans. The men defended the town against tremendous odds, and when the women saw that the defeat was inevitable, they lit a monstrous fire on the marketplace. And when the enemy broke down the gates, 74 lakh 74,500 women 74,500 women jumped into the huge funeral pyre and perished in the flame. This noble example has been handed down in India to the present times, when every letter bears the word 74,500. which means that anyone who unlawfully read the letter thereby becomes guilty of the crime similar to the one which drove those noble women of Chittor to their death. The next period is that of the monks. It came with the advent of Buddhism, which thought that only the monk could reach the nirvana, something similar to the Christian heaven. The result was that all Indian became one huge monastery. There was but one subject or one object, one battle to remain pure. All the blame was cast onto women, and even the proverb warned against them. What is the gate to hell? Was one of them, to which the answer was woman. Another read, what is the chain which binds us all to the dust? Woman. Another one, who is the blindest of the blind? Who he who is deceived by the woman. The same idea is to be found in the cloister of West. The development of all monasticism always meant the degeneration of woman, but eventually another idea of womanhood arose. In the West, it found its idea in the wife, in India, in the mother, but do not think that the priests were although responsible for this changing or this change. I know they always lay claim to everything in the world and say this, although I am myself a priest, I will bind my knees to every prophet. I will bend my knees to every prophet in every religion and claim. But candor compelled me to say that here in the West, the development movement was brought about by men like John Stuart Mill and the revolutionary French philosopher. Religion has done something, no doubt, but not all. Why? In Asia Minor, Christian bishops to this day keep a harem. The Christian idea is that which is found in the Anglo-Saxon race. The Mohammedan woman differ vastly from her West sisters in so far as her social and intellectual development is not so pronounced, but do not on the account think that the Mohammedan woman is unhappy because it is not so. In India, woman has enjoyed property rights since thousands of years. Here a man may inherit it. Here a man may disinherit his wife. In India, the whole estate of deceased husband must go to the wife. Personal property absolutely, real property for life. In India, the mother is the center of the family and her highest idea. She is to use the representative of God, as God is the mother of the universe. It was a female sage who first found the unity of God and laid down this doctrine. He in one of the first hymns of the Vedas. Our God is both personal and absolute. The absolute is male and the personal is female, and thus it comes that we now say the first manifestation of God is the hand that rocks the cradle. He is of the Aryan race who is born through prayers, and he is the Norarian who is born through sensuality. This doctrine of prenatal influence is now slowly being recognized, and the science as well as religion calls out. Keep yourself holy and pure. So deeply has this been recognized in India that there we even speak of adultery in marriage, except when marriage is consummated in prayers. And I and every good Hindu believes that my mother was pure and holy, and hence I owe her everything that I am. That is a secret of the race, chastity or chastity. Next, True Buddhism, published in Brooklyn Standard Union, February 4th, 1895. Swami Vivekananda, being presented by Dr. James, the president of Ethical Association, under whose auspices these lectures are given, said in part, the Hindu occupies a unique position towards Buddhism. Like Christian who antagonized the Jews, Buddha antagonized the prevailing religion of India. But while Christian was rejected by his countrymen, Buddha was accepted as God incarnation. He denounced the priestcraft at the very doors of their temples, and yet today he is worshipped by them. Not, however, the creed which bears his name, what Buddha taught. The Hindu believes, but what the Buddhists teach, we do not accept. For the teaching of the great master spread out broadcast over the land, came back in tradition, colored by the channels through which they passed. In order to understand Buddhism fully, we must go back to the mother religion from which it came. The books of Ved, the books of Ved have two parts. The first, Kuramakanda, Kuramakanda, that is Karmakanda, contains the sacrificial portion, while the second part, the Vedant, denounces sacrifices and teaches charity and love, but not death. Each sect took each sect took up what portion it liked. The Charvaka, or materialistic, basing his doctrine on the first part, believed that all was matter and that there is neither a heaven nor a hell, neither a soul nor a god. The second sect, the Jain, were very moral atheists who, while rejecting the idea of God, believed that there is soul. Striving for more perfect development, these two sects were called as heretics. The third sect was called Orthodox because it accepted the Vedas, although it denied the existence of personal God, believing that everything sprang from the atom or nature. Thus, the intellectual world was divided before Buddha came. But for the correct understanding of his religion, it is also necessary to speak of the caste then existing. The Vedas teach that we Vedas teach that he who knows God is the Brahma, that is Brahmin. He who protects his fellows is a Chokta, that is Kshatriya. While he who gains his livelihood in trade is a Vishya, that is Vaishya. These different social diversions or divisions developed or degenerated into iron bounds, that is the castes, and organized and crystallized priestcraft stood upon the neck of the nation. At this time, Buddha was born, and his religion is therefore the culmination of an attempt at the religious and social reformation. The air was full of the dine. The air was full of the dine of discussion. 20,000 blind priests were trying to lead 20 crores of blind men, fighting amongst themselves. What was more needed at that time than for the Buddha to preach? Stop quarreling. Throw your books aside. Be perfect. Buddha never fought through caste, for they are nothing but the congregations of those of the particular natural tendencies, and they are always valuable. But Buddha fought the degenerated caste with their hereditary privilege and spoke of Brahmins. True Brahmins are not greedy, nor criminal, nor angry. Are, are you such? If not, do not mimic the genuines, the real men. The caste is a state, not an iron bound class. Are not an iron bound class, and everyone who knows and loves God is a true Brahmin. And with this regard to the sacrifice, he said, where do the Vedas say that sacrifice make up pure or make us pure? They may please perhaps the angel, but they make us no better. Hence, let off this murmurs, love God, and strive to be perfect. In later years, this doctrine of Buddha were forgotten, going to lengths yet unprepared for reception of this noble truth. They came back tangled, tainted with the fossil of this nation. Thus the nihilist arose, a sect whose doctrine it was that the whole universe, God and soul, had no basis, but that everything is continuously changing. They believed in nothing but the enjoyment of the moment, which eventually resulted in the most revolting orgies. That, however, is not the doctrine of the Buddha, but the horrible degeneration of it, and horror of Hindu nation, who stood up and drove it out. Every one of Buddha's teaching is founded in the Vedantas. He was one of those monks who wanted to bring out the truth hidden in those books and in the forest monasteries. I do not believe that the world is ready for them even now. It still wants those lower religions which teach of a personal God. Because of this, the original Buddhism could not hold the popular mind, and until it took up the modification which were reflected back from the Tibet and Tartars. Original Buddhism was not at any nihilistic. It was but an attempt to combat caste and priestcraft, to give the first in the world to stand as champions of the dumb animals, the first to break down the caste, standing between man and man. Swami Vivekananda concluded his lecture with the presentation few pictures from the life of the Buddha, the great one, who never thought and never performed a deed except for the good of others, who had the greatest intellect and heart, taking in all mankind and all the animals, all embracing, ready to give up his life for the highest angels as well as for the lowest worms. He first showed how Buddha, for the purpose, he first showed how Buddha, for the purpose of saving a herd of sheep intended for the king's sacrifice, had thrown himself upon the altar and thus accomplished his purpose. He next pictured how the great prophet had parted from his wife and baby at the cry of suffering mankind, and how, lastly, after his teaching had been universally accepted in India, he accepted the invitation of a despised pariah who dined him on swine flesh, from the effect of which he died. Next, next is the India's gift to the world, published in Brooklyn Standard Union, February 27, 1895. Swami Vivekananda, the Hindu monk, delivered a lecture Monday night under the auspices of the Brooklyn Ethical Association before a fairly large audience at the hall of a Long Island Historical Society, corner Perry and Clinton Street. His subject was India's gift to the world. He spoke of the wondrous beauties of his native land, where stood the earliest cradles of ethics, art, science, literature, and the integrity of whose son and the virtues of whose daughter have been sung by all travelers. Then the lecturer showed in the details what India has been to the world. In religion, he said, she has exerted a great influence on Christianity, as the very teaching of Christian would or could be traced back to those of Buddha. He showed by quotations from the works of European and American scientists the many points of similarities between the Buddha and Christian. The latter boasts his seclusion from the world, the number of his apostles, and very ethics of his teachings are the same as those of Buddha, living many hundred years before him. It is mere chance, the lecturer asked, or was Buddha's religion but the foreshadowing of that of Christ? The majority of your thinkers seem to be satisfied in a later explanation, but there are some bold enough to say that Christianity is the direct offspring of Buddhism, just as the earliest heresy in the Christian religion, the monarchy heresy, is now universally regarded as the teachings of the sect of Buddhism. But there is more evidence that Christianity is founded in Buddhism. We find it in recently discovered inscriptions from the reign of Emperor Ashok of India about 300 BC, who made treaties with all the Grecian kings and whose missionaries disseminated In those very parts where centuries after Christianity flourished, the principle of Buddhism, Buddhistic religion. Thus, it is the explanation why you have our doctrine of Trinity, of our incarnation of God, and of our ethics, why the service is our temples is so much alike to that or in your present Catholic churches, from the Mass of the chant and the benediction. Buddhism had all this long before you. Now, use your own judgment on these premises. We Hindus stand ready to be convinced that yours is the earlier religion, although we had ours some 300 years before yours was even thought of. The same hold good with respect to science. India has given an antiquity the earliest scientific physicians, and according to Sir William Hunter, she has even contributed to the modern medical science by the discovery of various chemicals and by teaching you how to reform misshapen ear and noses. Even more, it has done in mathematics for algebra, geometry, astronomy, and the trampoline of the modern science, mixed mathematics, were all invented in India. Just so much has 10 numerals, the very cornerstone of all very present civilization, were discovered in India and are in reality Sanskrit words. In philosophy, we are even now head and shoulders above any other nation, as Schopenhauer, the great German philosopher, has confessed. In music, India gave to the world her system of notation with the seven cardinal notes and the diatonic scale, all of which we enjoy has early as 350 BC, while it came to Europe only in the 11th century. In philosophy, our Sanskrit language is now universally acknowledged to be the foundation of all European languages, which in fact are nothing but jargonized Sanskrit. In literature, our epic and poems and drama rank as high as those of any other languages. Our Shakuntala was summarized by German's greatest poet has heaven and earth unity. India has given to the world the fable of Aesop, which were copied by Aesop from the old Sanskrit book. It has given the Arabian Nights, yes, even the story of Cinderella and the beanstalk. In manufacture, India was the first to make cotton and purple dye. It was proficient in all works of jewelry and very word sugar, as well as the article itself is the product of India. Lastly, she has invented the game of chess and the card and the dice. So great, in fact, was superiority of India in every respect, and that it drew to her borders the hunger cohort of Europe, and thereby indirectly brought about the discovery of America. And now, what has the world given to India in return for all that? Nothing but nullification and curse and contempt. The world waded in her children's lifeblood. It reduced India to poverty and her son and daughters to slavery. And now it adds insult to injure by preaching to her a religion which can only thrive on the destruction of every other religion. But India is not afraid. It does not beg for mercy at the hands of any nation. Our only fault is that we cannot fight to conquer, but we trust in the eternity of truth. India's message to the world is first of all her blessings. She is returning good for the evil which is done her, and thus she put into the execution this noble idea which had its origin in India. Lastly, India's message is that calm, goodness, patience, and gentleness will ultimately trumpet. For where are the Greeks, the one time masters of the earth? They are gone. Where are the Romans at the trump of whose cohort the world trembled, passed away? Where are the Arabs who in 50 years had carried their banners from the Atlantic to the Pacific? And where are these Spaniards, the cruel murderers of millions of men? Both races are nearly extinct, but thanks to the morality of her children, the kinder race will never perish, and she will yet see the hours of her triumph. At the close of the lecture, which was warmly applauded, Swami Vivekananda answered a number of questions in regard to the customs of India. He denied positively the truth of the statement published in yesterday's February 22nd Standard Union to the effect that widows are ill treated in India. The law guarantees her not only her own property before marriage, but also all she receives from her husband, at whose death, if there be no direct heir, the property goes to her. Widows seldom marry in India because of the scarcity of men. He also stated that the self sacrifice of wives at the death of their husband, as well as the fanatical self destruction juggernaut, under the wheels of juggernauts, have wholly stopped, and referred his hearer for proof to Sir William Hunter, History of Indian Empire.